Do you want to buy a home, but were denied a home loan because of bad credit? I mean, having a low credit score ultimately prevents you from building wealth through taking out loans so that you can leverage your money. So if you want to know how to improve your credit score, stay tuned because in this conversation, we're going to give you 3 tips that you can utilize right now to fix your credit score so that you can buy that home and start building wealth. Today, I have the pleasure of Dirk Hellige. He's a mortgage loan officer with Bank Iowa, and I am thrilled that he is here to help us out with this credit dilemma. Hi, Dirk.
Good morning. Yes, let's do this.
So I think credit is a mystery to a lot of people. I mean, we don't know what it is, how it's calculated, what we should do if our credit score limits our purchasing power. So maybe a good place to start would be, what is credit and why is it so important?
So credit scoring, a credit report, credit is basically the health or a snapshot of the health of your finances and your debt and how you're utilizing that. And it pretty much gives us, I guess the best way to put it is like a grade or a score on your ability to repay a loan.
And I think a lot of people are afraid of that word, debt. But I think having debt is a great way to leverage your money and to build credit. That credit building is very important, when you want to purchase those large ticket items.
Yeah.
Since most of us don't have that cash underneath our mattress to pay cash for a home, we've got to get a loan. The importance of having credit is to be able to leverage your money.
Yeah, it's a very important thing to do. A lot of people don't understand debt, are afraid of debt, don't know how to utilize debt, but it's a very important thing to leverage to get things that you want.
Credit's a financial history of how your history of being able to pay money back that you've borrowed. And the better your score, the better your borrowing ability, right?
Yeah, right. That's exactly what we're looking for. Is that snapshot that tells us your score tells us how you've been doing.
Okay. So can you shed some light on how credit's calculated?
Yeah, so there's a few different things that are looked at. There's some things that are pretty major and some things that aren't as important when grading credit. The biggest grade for credit score is your payment history. That's the number one, that's the biggest, most weighted item for a FICO credit score is your payment history. Because obviously that's the most important thing. We as lenders, we want to know that you make your payments on time. And that would reflect a good credit score if you make your payments on time. Another thing that's looked at is what's called amounts owed, or AKA credit utilization. So, when you have a credit card, let's say with a limit, easy numbers here, a limit of $100, and you're at the max of that limit every single month, that can affect your score because you're borrowing the max, and that affects your score. So that's another big weighted item is the amounts owed on that debt. There's also some smaller ones they look at. They'll look at like your length of credit history, how far back you've been using credit. That determines your strength, because people with really long credit history typically have really good scores just because there's a lot of history there. They look at another small factor they look at is your credit mix. When I say mix, credit cards, auto loans, other installment loans, mortgages. How versed are you in credit? How many different credit items have you had? Like I said, it's not very important. It's a very small factor to the big equation, but it's in there. And another really small factor is new credit. It's just like it sounds, how much new credit do you have? Because as far as banks or creditors are concerned, if you take out a lot of new debt quickly, that's risky. So they're going to look for, are you taking out a lot of debt really fast at one time, or are you pretty spread throughout it where you're not taking out too much quick? So all those factors are all weighted, but the two biggest weights are credit utilization or amounts owed and the payment history.
We've been talking a lot about credit scores. So what are the actual numbers? What do the numbers look like?
So personally, what I have seen, people have said before they've seen lower, but I never have. Usually it's between like a 500 and an 850, right? For FICO scores, you're going to be between that range is where you're going to see your score.
I tell my daughter, who's a college student, that she should be using her credit card instead of her debit card so that she can start to build credit, because eventually she'll want to buy a home, just like a lot of young people. I don't know if she listens or not, but isn't that one way to build credit? And or do you have other recommendations for people to start to build credit?
Easiest way to build credit is to use credit. You can't build it if you're not going to use it. So I guess that'd be the first one. That'd be number one thing we can do to build your credit score is use credit. And then there's some subcategories to using credit. I can't just say, oh yeah, use credit, you're all good, just use it. No, let's talk about using it the right way. So number one, use credit. But how do you use credit wisely? Well, I would recommend whatever debt you take on, credit card, loan, whatever it is, set up auto pay. Because as we talked about earlier, the largest weighted item is your payment history. So if you set up auto pay, you'll never miss a payment, because people that say, oh, don't worry, I'll remember. And then something happens that one time and they forgot, they have a 30-day late payment, and that score they've been working so hard to bring up just dropped down really fast because of a late payment.
Yeah.
So, that's the number one ticket item when it comes to using credit, is just make sure your payments are on time. Set up auto pay. And don't be afraid if you want to make payments. I mean, I know people that make payments on their credit card 5 times a month. They use it for a week and they pay it off. They use it for a week and they pay it. They just keep paying it off, which is also really good, because paying off your credit card frequently is reporting all those payments to the credit bureaus. So you're constantly making payments on credit well on time.
Right.
So, it's just on-time payments, auto pay, like those are things I would definitely focus on, and just utilizing credit. That's just the first thing.
Okay. So we've got tip number 1. Before we get to tip number 2, I want to know, what is a bad credit score? I mean, what would you consider, since you're a mortgage lender, what would you consider a credit score that you would have to deny a loan?
Well, there's lots of different programs. There's things out there that can approve people with low credit scores. So I want to say that first is, just because you have a bad score doesn't mean you can't get approved for a loan. But if you want the best loan options out there, you got to have a really good credit score. So let's go through my opinion on what I believe is bad credit all the way to excellent credit. So if you're, in my opinion, if you're below 660 credit score, to me, I mean, I think that's bad credit. A lot of people would argue that and call that, in the 600s, your fair credit. No, I say that's bad. Anything below 660, that's not very good. I definitely work on trying to get that up. And between 660 and 700, if you're in between there, I call that fair. That's what I would call fair credit. And then if you're between 700 and 740, I call that good credit. And if you're 740 or higher, I call that excellent credit, because once you're above 740 in the mortgage industry, you get the best. That's the best if you have that score. So 740 is that benchmark number. If you hit that and you're above that, awesome. You're going to get a great rate, a good loan when getting a mortgage.
So the lower my credit score is, then the higher I will pay in interest rate and closing costs and for a mortgage loan.
Yep.
The
Fees, costs, yep, all that stuff. Yep.
Okay, the higher my credit score is, the lower my interest rate and closing costs would be for a mortgage loan. So we know what credit is, and we know the importance of having good credit, how it's calculated, what the numbers are actually are. Where do I go to get this information? I mean, where do I go to find my score?
What I recommend using is myfico.com. You
Okay.
can pay for a one-time credit pull. And the reason why I say FICO is there's several different credit scoring systems out there. For instance, if you go like the Credit Karma, or you go to your credit card website and you look at your credit, that's not necessarily a FICO score. That could be what's called a Vantage score, which has different weightings to it. But when qualifying for a mortgage, we look at FICO score. So that's why I'd recommend you go to myfico.com, right? Because you're going to get your FICO score and you're going to see what I see. And that's what's important, because
Right. Well,
a lot of people that use Credit Karma says their score something, they call me to get a mortgage. I pull their credit. I'm showing their credit scores 30, 40 points lower than what Credit Karma shows, and the customer's upset and they're like, why? Well, it's because they use different scoring methods. So FICO is the safest scoring method to go off of, so I recommend using my FICO.
We've got tip number 1, which was to use it.
Yep.
And never miss a payment, pay it off on time. And the best practice would be to set up auto pay on it, auto payment, so you never miss one, right?
Yep, you got it.
So let's get to tip number 2.
All right, tip number 2 was kind of when we talked about the different weights that calculate your credit score. So now we're going with the second biggest weight, which was the credit utilization.
Okay.
Also known as amounts owed. So let's just use this as the easiest example, is the credit card limit again. Let's say you have a $100 limit. The credit companies say you get the best credit score and the best looking credit if you keep your credit utilization below 30%. Okay, so what's that mean? Well, if your limit's $100, 30% of the limit's $30. So that means you need to keep your balance below $30 every month on that credit card. And as long as you can keep it under $30, that will help boost your credit score up and keep it moving. So, I mean, if you use your credit card a lot, you might have to make payments on it frequently throughout the month to keep it below that 30% number. Or maybe you're just good enough where you have a high limit and you never even touch that 30%. But it's just good to know that, hey, you need to make sure you're below that 30% threshold for your credit utilization on credit cards.
Let's say, for example, that I charged $92 on this $100 limit that I've got. So it doesn't matter if I pay that off every month. The credit cards company is still going to ding me, shall we say, because I'm above that 30%.
Yep, that's correct. So what I always encourage people to look for is there's 2 different dates when it comes to credit cards. You have your payment due date, which I recommend that you set up for the first every month your credit cards due. But there's another date that a lot of people don't know about. It's the reporting date. So every credit card company, for every credit card, they report to the credit bureaus, the people who figure out your score, they report to them every single month on a certain date. You want to find out what that date is, because you want to make sure that you're under the 30% by that date. So again, there's 2 dates that you have: the due date of your credit card, okay, and then the reporting date. If you're not sure what that reporting date is, call the credit card company and ask them. And just always make sure by that reporting date that you're below the 30%. The rest of the month, you can be above that 30% number. But me personally, when I'm like because payments don't post necessarily right away. So I always recommend, like, if you're above 30%, you're 2 days from the reporting date or 3 days, do it then, pay it down below to not get back above when it gets reported. Yeah, it's just a safe way to do it to ensure your credit never dips. It just keeps moving up the right direction.
Well, that's very interesting because I was not aware of reporting dates that are different from due dates. So
Yep.
I always just, thought I was in good standing being able to pay off my credit card every month by the due date. But now I understand the reporting date. So going along that line, then it would make sense that if you're going to be spending more than the 30%, to call the credit card companies. Can you do that? Call them and ask to increase your limit?
Yeah, certainly can. Because when you first applied for your credit card, that information might be irrelevant now. You got to remember, these credit card companies know nothing new about you basically since you applied. When you apply for a credit card, they're going to ask you, where do you work? How much do you make? What industry do you work in? They're going to ask these questions. How much money do you have in the bank? I mean, they're going to ask these things. So it's good to call them to increase the limit and update them. Like, oh, hey, yeah, I got a promotion. So now my income is way higher than I first reported when I got the card. Oh, you had a promotion. You make, $20,000 more a year. Oh yeah, we can raise your credit limit by $5,000. I mean, it's large. I don't know exactly the number, but it doesn't hurt to call and ask to raise the limit because it really makes it a lot easier to stay below that 30% if you have a pretty good size limit.
So we've got tip number 1, to use it responsibly. Tip number 2 is the credit utilization, that don't spend more than 30% of your limit. Okay, we're ready. Drum roll. What's tip number 3?
Number 3. Okay, so number 3 is a tip to help boost your credit score quickly. What people can do is you can become an authorized user on another person's credit card account. Okay. Now, an authorized user, you don't have to have a physical credit card at all. You just be on the account with someone. And then by doing that, that person's history is now a part of your history. And now because you took all that credit history, it can help boost your credit really fast. So if you're working with someone that doesn't have much credit, doesn't have much history, they can go ask their parents, assuming they have great credit history, they can ask their parents to be an authorized user on their credit card account, and then their score boosts, 50, 100 points, whatever the case is, just because they got added to someone else's history. That's really good history. That's a big key too. When you can't just say, hey, can I be an authorized user on your account? And you're asking someone that has really poor credit history. You don't want to do that. You got to make sure that you ask somebody who's got a really good score, really good history. And most likely that's usually a family member. I would never ask a friend to do something like that, but I mean, hey, ask whoever you want. But most of the time I see family members doing that for each other. But it's a really good idea that if you guys have someone that's 18 and you want to help them build their credit, you set them up with their own credit card account of their own. And then at the same time, you add them as an authorized user on your credit account. So it helps get their score up quick. And then they have their own credit card that they can use in their own account to help build it from there.
Is there a timeline? I mean, what could we expect? Is it a month? Is it 3 months? Is it a year?
It's all situational. It depends on what's on that history. Depends on what's on the history. I mean, if there's some really bad stuff on the history, judgments, liens, bankruptcies, foreclosures, just really heavy stuff, that's going to take a little bit longer to fix. If it's something really simple and easy, I'll give some tips and it might jump their credit score. It might take a month, 2 months, because it's not like instant, because all these companies have reporting dates like we talked about. So nothing's going to really get reported to any of the credit bureaus until the reporting date hits. So, it could take a month, it could take 2 months. It just depends on how far you need to go, right? If you're trying to only boost your score 10 points, I mean, you could probably do that within a month or 2 months pretty easy. If you're trying to boost 100 points, that could take a little more time depending on what's on that history. So it's really tough question to answer. It could take a month, could take 2 years. Just depends on what's on there.
Has there been a client of yours recently or whatever that was pre-approved for a loan and for some reason or other, maybe they missed a payment? Like how would that affect their
Yeah.
ultimate? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's happened.
Oh, okay.
It happened, like 3-4 weeks ago. It's happened. I had a buyer. They had credit. I don't remember the exact score, but I know they're in the middle 700s, like 750, 760. Really good. What we look for, right, for a mortgage.
Yes.
And then I got a call from that customer, and they said, "Hey, we just found out that we had a 30-day late payment because they took out financing for, I don't remember what it was, like air conditioner, furnace, something, HVAC, that they had updated on their home. And they, I guess, miscommunication with the company, didn't know payment was owed, but a payment was owed 30 days late. And this is someone with great history, I don't even recall seeing any late payments at all in their whole history of the report that I looked at.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh boy, well, I got to pull a new credit report anyway, because I would have to anyway before closing, because the one I had was going to expire. So I had to pull a new credit report anyway. So I pulled it, and their score went from, like I said, mid 750s down to like 670 something. So like a 80-90 point drop.
Wow.
Just for one 30-day late payment on some air conditioning unit or furnace, whatever it was. Not a big debt, but had 30-day late payment, and it dropped their score that much. Now, did they still qualify for a loan? Yeah, they did. It's not a big enough drop to really hurt someone for qualifying for a mortgage, but the interest rate that they were looking at, because we were doing a conventional loan, the rate they were looking at changed because of that. So, it's just, it still was a pretty good rate considering, but still it changed quite a bit. Where that would maybe affect their payments $75, $80 a month. So
yeah, you add that up over a year, and that's some significant money,
right? Yeah, it really impacted that one. So it shows you, just one 30-day late payment can really drop you that much.
Wow. Time to review our tips. So get out your pencil and paper, folks. We got tip number 1 is use it. Use the card. Don't miss a payment. And best practice is to set up auto payments. Tip number 2, don't charge over 30% of your credit card limit. So even if you pay it off every month, the credit card company is still looking at how much you are charging every month. So if your limit's $1,000, don't charge over $300. And tip number 3 is ask a family member to be an authorized user. If they have good credit history and credit utilization, then those will automatically transfer to you, boosting your credit score quickly and easily. Right, Dirk?
That's right.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dirk. It's been extremely helpful to me and hopefully to our viewers. And I do appreciate you joining me today. And Dirk's contact information is below, as well as mine. So if you have any question for either of us, we'd be happy to help. Thanks
Awesome.
again, Dirk.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.